Brew Strong is brought to you by Blickman Engineering, home of the top-tier brewing stand. Visit them online at blickmanengineering.com.
Brewers, it's time for the beer radio you've been looking for. This is the show that dispels myths, tackles the toughest topics, and makes no apologies for geeking out on beer. Hosted by two guys that drink before they think, Jamil and John Palmer. This is Brew Strong.
Hey, howdy, hey, my brewing brothers and sisters.
Greetings.
Back for another fine episode of Brew Strong. And actually, we're down here, both you and I, we came down for the Craft Brewers Conference in San Diego. Right. You've got your consulting business, Palmer's Brewing, or Palmer Brewing Solutions.
Yep, just started that up, and hopefully I can, not make a fool of myself here. I mean, this is quite the event.
You can always make a fool of yourself. One thing I realized on the drive down, I was thinking about working on the new brewery, and I was thinking all the mistakes I could make, and I realized that I have yet to plumb the depths of my own stupidity.
There's room for growth there.
You can always go deeper, lower. I can always. I have not hit bottom yet, and I'm quite capable of making a fool of myself, at any time, and most of the time. So,
I think I have the same potential.
So, no, I'm sure you'll do quite well. And, CBC is always a great fun time, and actually, since we're down here for CBC, and what's located down in San Diego,
right?
White Labs.
That's right.
The place that we get our yeast from, and so we decided to come down and do some live shows from White Labs.
Yeah.
Well, here we are.
We've got some special guests with us today.
Yeah, I thought that, we work with White Labs all the time, and we wanted to do some live shows during the Craft Brewers Conference, and we've never actually done live shows during CBC week.
It's first.
Because it's a big pain in the ass to try to do shows at the conference hall and things like that. But when Whitey here got his new building, which we had our anniversary party at in June, we realized that they had facilities for us finally to do some broadcasting from the Craft Brewers Conference. So I thought we'd change up Brew Strong a little bit and kind of have more of a panel discussion since we have the availability of more brewers around. Obviously, Chris White's here, and some of his staff. We're going to talk to Neva Parker later today. And this way, we could have all of your expertise, free up Jamil a little bit from just doing all the question asking, and actually get in on the panel. So I'm going to help moderate today's Brew Strong and get you guys going. And also to help us out today, our first guest, you might remember our old friend Yuseff Cherney from Ballast Brewing Company. He's hanging out with us today.
How are you doing?
Welcome, Yuseff.
Thank you for having me.
He brought us beer, and I think he brought whiskey.
Oh, yeah.
Just to warm us up after lunch, maybe.
Right.
Now, Ballast Point Brewing Company is one of the premier brewing companies down here in the San Diego area. So you must have a busy week ahead of you, too, Yuseff.
It's fairly busy. We've had a lot of tour groups coming in with, the judges came through on Monday, and then we had another whole big tour come through today, about 65, 70 people. So it's been a fun week. It's actually better probably for us to stay at the brewery and kind of welcome people than it is to go down to the town and country because a lot of people are coming to see us and good networking and all. So.
Yeah. It must be fun to host a Craft Brewers Conference. Of course, we had it up in San Francisco last year. And
you did?
It's,
I don't remember any of that.
That's how good of a host we are, Yuseff. It's just nice to have all your brewer friends and brewers that you haven't met come to your city, too, I think. And I think you're right, having them at your brewery is probably the most fun, too.
Yeah, it's amazing seeing, not only our old friends and all, but having people coming in from the Czech Republic and Germany and all these different places that normally don't go out into your tasting room and hear people speaking in Czech or something like that. So it's very interesting, and every once in a while when you can bust out a word in their language to them, it kind of shows them that you're trying at least. So.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
well, and that brings up a good point about this year's Craft Brewers Conference. What is it? Every 2 years, it's also the World Beer Cup. Which is as opposed to the Great American Beer Festival, where just American breweries enter, which is also a huge competition. The World Beer Cup allows breweries from all over the world to enter. So every other year of the Craft Brewers Conference, you get more of the international brewers, I think, coming to town also, because they're also participating in the World Beer Cup, which is taking place this year.
Right, and we, not to beat this into everybody, but we only have a few days left for this title, but we are the reigning small brewers of the world champions for 2010. So
nice.
We have a few days left. We're small brewer champions from the last World Beer Cup in Chicago. This time we'll be in the mid-size category. So got some strong competition. I know Matt usually has it all sealed up at Firestone Walker, but we'll try.
So you guys at Ballast Point began producing enough beer to move you up a category. Is that what happens?
Correct. Yeah, we've pretty much doubled in size since the last competition, and we're looking to double again this year. So
okay. Now, Jamil, Heretic has been... How long has Heretic been open? It's been more than a year now, hasn't it?
Well, no. We brewed our first beer on May 20th, so not quite
almost
a year brewing yet.
Okay. Did you enter into the World Beer Cup this year?
No. For me, competition's never been of any interest. Right. No, it's just the logistics of doing it. Right now everything is just so crazy that I was like, I'll skip it. We'll probably do it next year or 2 years from now.
Okay. The way I hear it, you hardly have any beer left to give away.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. We end up running out of beer, so
all right.
Just, I don't know. I think we need to focus on just trying to make beer.
Right.
Once I have a moment to relax after that, then I'll think about it, more seriously. But it's and I just don't think we'll win anything. That's always my thought. It's like, we won't win anything. Why enter?
See, that's what you would say when you won Ninkasi and everything at the Homebrewers Conference too. I don't know. Maybe there's so many other great brewers out there.
Well, there are, and there's even more. In homebrewing, I had amassed some skill, and now in commercial brewing, there's people like Yuseff to contend with. It's like, oh please,
Yuseff, have you gotten a chance to try any Heretic beer yet?
I have not.
Okay.
Why waste my money? Why waste my time?
Listen to poor Jamil.
Next year maybe I'll try.
Well, he did bring a couple growlers, didn't he? Oh no, that's Ballast Point.
That's Ballast.
See, it got me at every turn. I can't succeed.
Make sure we
against
face
that.
these which way the camera's pointed.
Right. All right.
I
Well,
was just gonna say, I think winning these competitions, whether it's JBF or World Beer Cup, sometimes I hear people say all the time, it doesn't really matter. That's not what Jamil said, but that's what people say sometimes. Mm-hmm. Is it going to really make a difference? But I can tell you, just being a couple miles from Ballast Point, they're just over the freeway from us here. I've seen the public notice their awards at World Beer Cup, and then some of the other ones. And so just the buzz that got created about some of the beers like Sculpin and after that, you could really notice it.
Well, and it's not like, some people enter and they don't win, and they go, well, it's just a random chance. The judges don't win. That's not true. I think there may be some little small elements of preference one way or another, but you got to be making great beer to kind of get into that
ballpark.
Top couple of beers out of 150. If you're not making good beer, then you're in the bottom half of that, or you can't get up to that element
3,000.
where you're actually competing. So,
especially now,
it's a tough thing.
The competition these days, when we started 15 years ago, there wasn't the amount of great beer being produced.
Right.
So it was a little bit easier to kind of squeak a award here and there. But now, not only I think the judges a lot more trained, but we're going up against 120 different beers in one category, for example. So to do that and still come out with a gold is pretty amazing, and it's kind of like the best pat on the back you can get from your peers.
Sure.
When it finally comes true, and when you don't win, it totally is a crapshoot, and it's just a lucky draw.
It really sucks. Yeah.
So my question, Yuseff, is: are you going to go to the awards dinner on Saturday night to see if you won a medal?
Well, I am going to be eating a Italian beef that's flown in from Chicago, because that's what I was doing right before the awards ceremony last time. When Chris White convinced me that I had to go, we were going to skip the awards ceremony. We didn't even have a ticket, and Chris texted, I think, and told us that we had to come. And what are you guys doing? You're all the way here, and and then we ended up sneaking away with the big prize there,
And had you arrived at the awards by then to receive that?
We were there for the whole series. Yeah,
okay.
we missed a little bit of the dinner, but
Right.
and we'd already eaten anyway. Portillo's, we were on an Italian beef quest.
Wow.
So we were sitting there eating, and both myself and Jack were looking across the table at each other, going, "Okay, should we go? Should we go?" And we finally went, "Yeah, we should go." So that would have been the ultimate in lameness. We already missed one of our medals at GABF. 1 year, and we got ungodly amounts of crap for that.
I bet.
But so we kind of developed a theory that we shouldn't go, because if we don't go, we'll win an award.
I see.
So there was a little bit of that, and now our motto is more just owning it. I'm going to need help actually carrying awards out this time. So
I thought maybe your motto would be half go. We just half go. Plan to do something else and then kind of show up.
That's kind of what happened in Kentucky. We were out there for the Spirits Award show. And Jack ended up missing the bus, so I was out by myself, and ended up walking away with three medals. So that was a half go.
Well, we're going to have to get you on to talk about that too, because I know we mentioned it when you were on the show. In fact, last time you were on the session, you brought us one of your first batches of rum, I think maybe it was, and you guys have been distilling now for a couple of years. So we'll have to make sure we come back to that topic either on Brew Strong or another show. For today, one thing about the new White Labs facility and kind of speaking to our Brewing Network listeners that were at our anniversary party, there's a lot you haven't seen about the new White Labs facility. When we were here on their soft opening, basically, most of it wasn't built. Well, one of the things that has been Chris White's dream is to have an on-site tasting room inside White Labs. And what's the purpose of a tasting room at a yeast company, Chris?
Well, I wanted people to taste different yeast strains and different beers. We've all done that at Homebrew. A lot of listeners have done it. I've done it. Yuseff's done it. Jamil, John. You take the same batch of wort, you split it up, you ferment it with different yeast strains, and we do those as one-offs, and we do a lot here to experiment with different yeast strains. But with this tasting room, we can do it every day, and if you want to taste something, or you want to taste a different yeast strain, you don't have to go through the whole process of doing that. I can just walk over to the bar and try it.
Right.
And so since we're making so little very small batches, we're doing new batches every day, 2 or 3 20-gallon batches, and splitting those into 5-gallon fermentations. And then when people come visit here, they can come in, the public can come in and try different yeast strains with different beers.
Okay.
So I've wanted this to be a place where it also has a lot of hours. Some of the tasting rooms around here are open very limited hours, and that's fine. They're promoting those breweries, but I view this as a place where some people might just be visiting San Diego for 1 or 2 days, and so we need to be open for that person to be able to come here and try those.
So you're open 24 hours a day?
Yes, the 7-Eleven model.
Right.
The state doesn't let us do that. We have to close by 9 o'clock.
I know the Whites, and they would do that if they could. They are late night guys, and they would definitely do that here. Well, it's an awesome concept, and I've seen, I'm sure you've noticed some of the press you've been getting and some of the social network press you've been getting, and everyone's saying that the newest destination in San Diego is the White Labs tasting room. And so not only is it beautiful, Push Eject is down here producing for us today. He's going to take a bunch of photos of the tasting room, and we'll get those up on our Twitter site and Facebook for you. You can watch all this right now on justin.tv/brewing network, but the tasting room is something to behold. You guys have really done a nice job designing it. But obviously the cool thing is to be able to come in and taste beers the way White Labs would brew the beers with the yeast, with, I assume, the way you recommend brewing with the yeast, and to have samples of those that people can come in and say, I'm interested in brewing a Saison, for example. I sure would like to try a Saison with your yeast, and that's what you have available here in the tasting room. So I think... Go ahead.
Yeah, it'll probably develop into that, and there'll be more experiments that we'll do. Right now, just one wort, different yeast strains, but among 32 different handles, there's different types of beer styles with different types of yeast strains.
Got it.
But and then we'll do different experiments and things like that. But from what you said there, making, say, a world-class example of something with the yeast strain, we're more interested right now in making a comparison. So we don't want to make the best pale ale ever made. And, if you were going to put your name on that, it was going to be Heretic Pale Ale. I think you would really focus on making the best possible pale ale you can.
No, we might sort of try. I don't know.
All right.
And our focus with this has been a little bit more, let's do a comparison of different yeast strains. Let's let this comparison speak for itself. But as we do this more and more, we have the ability to keep tweaking those recipes to make them better and better and better. Because we're going to keep making them because they're going to run out so fast. We have 10 beers run out every day.
You're brewing on a homebrew system, right?
Yeah, a beer, more beer brewing sculpture.
Okay, got it.
And the Brewmaster.
And a Brewmaster, too.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, and I think a lot of people don't appreciate until they've tasted, beer side by side. And like Chris is saying, the same wort, different yeasts. So... it may not be an ideal wort for the best Saison or the best, barley wine or whatever, but the radical differences between the same wort fermented with different yeasts is something to behold, and something that, if you do it as a home brewer, a lot of times you're like, I don't want to, split it up because, I don't want to take a chance on something. You come down here, you can taste... dozens of different, the impact dozens of different yeasts have on fermentation.
Yeah,
it's a substantial difference. It's such an important part of making a beer. And White Labs, they even have lab data on the yeast, and you share that with people if they ask for it as well.
It's on the bar.
Okay,
so
it's on the bar.
Wow.
And
we do a complete analytical analysis on each beer. So you can look at the flight of, say, IPAs, and you can look at the calories, color, IBUs, which will differ among the different yeast strains, and then the fermentation, the ending gravity, alcohol, and some of the other parameters. And so you can compare that to the sensory that you're experiencing.
So here's an example of how different it is and how important it is to have those numbers and taste those different beers. For example, in one of the things we were trying earlier, I noticed that the IBU difference between one and another, same wort, one of them came out at like 20 IBUs, and another one was 30 IBUs.
Interesting.
20 IBUs, 30 IBUs. Now, that's obviously a significant taste difference, and that's just changing the yeast.
Wow. Yeah. That's a great example.
Yeah, yeast are a sponge, and they take up hop compounds differently because each strain has a different makeup of the cell wall and plasma membrane. And you taste that. When you brew, if you use California ale yeast and English ale yeast or what other strains you might use, there's a big flavor difference. And that actually is... You can measure that in an IBU difference too.
Okay.
A lot of times people ask, well, why is this strain considered to be a more malty strain? Why is this one a more hoppy strain? Well, it's like Chris is saying, the amount of isomerized alpha acids or other hop compounds that the yeast take out of solution.
So it's not just attenuation.
It's not just attenuation. Attenuation all these things play a role in it. But right there, just IBUs. If you're planning on using different yeast, you go, wow, I'll need to actually hop this a little bit more to keep my bittering up if I use this yeast versus using that yeast. And
right.
You can actually, just tasting and looking at that information that they have here, you can learn a lot about yeast even before you ever brew with them.
Okay.
Yeah, I had one of the customers yesterday said that he was a home brewer, and he said he really liked the experience because he would have never thought of using Edinburgh yeast. It's just a yeast strain that never occurred to him, WOP28, to use. And it was the one he really liked in the flight of beers. And so hopefully those kind of things will happen each day. And commercial brewers, too, might say, hey, what about this strain? Because there are a lot of other strains that we make that most commercial brewers don't use. Because you go for clean, neutral, but there are some that are just a little on the fringes of clean, neutral that are really interesting.
Well, to do the tests ourselves, it's it's extra work. We're already busy with stuff. It's
Let
nice
you
to,
do it.
Let you guys do it. And otherwise, when you buy a commercial pitch, it's not cheap.
Right.
Well, and I think it's interesting, too, because White Labs really has been doing it for years, but we only get to experience it in writing. I mean, yeast descriptions are on the White Labs website, and they're on the vial, and so we just have to take your word for it, and this is an added component where we get to just actually come.
You can talk about this stuff all the time, and people, you kind of shake your head, oh, yeah, yeast make a difference, but tasting it, I can see that the expression on people's faces sometimes when they do it. The mayor of San Diego was here last summer for your party, Justin, on June 15th, because he cut the ribbon. That was the day we opened the building. And Neva Parker did a little brew for him and did different yeast strains. And the expression on his face, I'll just never forget, because he was trying a Belgian a beer made with Trappist and a beer made with a California ale yeast and some other things. And he couldn't believe that the Belgian yeast didn't have some spice added to it. It couldn't just be from the yeast.
Right.
And
that's a cool experience.
And to see that, and that really made me want to double my efforts to get the tasting room open so people can experience that.
Well, we've got a lot to do today based upon that, and I think it's going to be a great experience. I know Whitey pretty well, and this is I think, the new beer geek place to be in Southern California to get to do this and see all the information. And I know for a fact, I've seen Whitey's face light up when he sees people taste different, when they start talking about the beer. He's really into, obviously, he wants to sell some yeast, but I think the thing that really more drives Chris White is seeing people experience it and a light bulb go off in their head about this stuff. And so that's what we're going to do a little bit today. We have a whole bunch of beers in front of us. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to try, I guess this is probably one of the first experiments that you guys have run here, Chris?
Yeah, that was in the first week, and those were beers that was actually a Ballast Point collaboration.
Okay.
We call it, because it was Ballast Point Pale Ale that we fermented here, so made across the street.
With their word.
Yeah, we pulled off 8 barrels, brought it over here, distributed that into many 40 or 50 different 5-gallon carboys, pitched different yeast strains, fermented here at a different temperature than they would, but we're able to compare now that pale ale recipe made with lots of different yeast strains. So most of the beers, almost all the rest of the beers that we have here, including some saisons that we just put on before this talk, were made here. But this is an example of our first collaboration beer.
Okay. Perfect.
Very cool.
So before we go to the break, of course, we need to thank our wonderful sponsor of this show, even though we're out on the road.
Yes,
bringing
you Northern Brewer.
Is it Northern Brewer this week?
No, it's Blickman.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's right. Northern Brewer is also a sponsor of the show, but this Brew Strong and every Brew Strong, no matter where we are, is brought to you by Blickman Engineering.
That's right.
I wonder if John's down here this week.
Innovating your homebrew.
Yeah.
That's what JP likes to say.
That's a brew system you might need to check out, Chris White. That Blickman brew system is pretty nice.
I would like to have different brew systems here and compare those and different things too. And we do have a Brewmaster system. So you'll notice on our beer menus, we say the brew system BS for brew sculpture or BM for Brewmeister.
Nice.
Maybe we need to
there's something for Blickman.
Sexy that up a little bit.
Or BT.
I think the Blickman is badass.
Yeah.
His
There's room for more here.
Right. Well, the thing I love about the Blickman, all the Blickman equipment, is that it's designed by a brewer engineer guy, and he's constantly thinking of new ways to improve the process, and in either repeatability of the process or ease of the process, or he's looking for quality results in an easier fashion, in a more repeatable fashion, and it's just amazing the things that this guy creates and comes up with. I'm always shocked and pleased at the same time.
Yeah, enthused. I was just brewing on mine last week, and I was checking out his hop rocket, his hop track.
Right.
Worked beautifully. I mean,
you're using that, and you're using the Tower of Power, and you're using,
at one point I
so nice.
cranked up the temperature to go to mash out, and then I just walked away and sat down and had pizza with my wife, and it's like, this thing's great.
Yeah, it does a lot of the work for you.
Yeah.
And the thing I've always said in the show over the years is that, people go, oh, do I really need it to do it for me? It's like, well, yeah, I mean, it's not brewing the beer for you. You're determining all the parameters, but what it does is, those days when you're more tired or more excited or somebody's talking to you, it's repeating the process exactly each time.
Yep.
So that you don't end up with a different beer because you're tired or you're excited or, somebody's talking to you and you're having beers with your friends and you mess up on something. You actually, you're controlling your process, and the pumps don't get tired. The controller doesn't forget to
or get drunk.
Make the change. Yeah, exactly.
Controller stays sober every time.
So that's one of the great things
about
doesn't
wander off to watch cartoons.
Doing something like that. Yeah.
Now, Yuseff, if you get Jack on board with us, we'll talk about you like this every week. Get that guy to cough up some change finally. We'll do that.
Let's do this. Let's take a short break. And when we come back, let's get into we'll be doing some tastings of these sample beers, and we'll talk about the differences of the yeast and more stuff like that right after this.
When you hear Blickman Engineering, think innovation, passion, quality, and customer service. Blickman gear is designed by brewers to give you a sense of pride in your equipment. At Blickman, they know what makes brewing a pain and build gear that makes it fun. Like the intuitive beer gun, a completely different approach to filling bottles. The Therminator Wort Chiller, a new take on a plate chiller that's sized for flow, performance, and the high groundwater temps homebrewers face every day. The Brewmometer, a brilliant weldless thermometer design with brewing parameters right on the dial. The Autosparge, ultimate simplicity for preventing an overflow or running your mash tun dry. And much more, like the modular top-tier brewing stand, conical fermenters, and their Boilermaker brew pots. With more cutting-edge equipment coming soon. Keep up with the latest from Blickman at blickmanengineering.com and stay on the cutting edge.
Hi, this is John from Grain and Grape. We've been supplying brewers in Australia for 21 years, and for all that time we've been working to offer the best service around, including free fortnightly all-grain brewing demos, 90 varieties of malted grain from Belgium, Germany, the US, Britain and Australia, equipment from Brewmasters, kegerators and crown urns to the humble brew-in-a-bag bag, heaps of hops, yeast liquid and fermenters and Danstar dried yeast cultures, fresh wort kits made at Mountain Goat Brewery and on the 200-litre Brewmaster right here in the warehouse. We also sponsor and support brewing clubs and comps, the Australian National Homebrewing Conference, Aussie Homebrewer Forum and heaps more. Mostly, though, 100 years of brewing experience means that we can give you the best advice on your next recipe, your new system, or that brewing problem that needs a solution. Mention the Brewing Network next time you order online or by phone for freight free on your next order. Check out grainandgrape.com.au for conditions.
Nico, listen, our lawyers said that we had to do this for 1 hour, and after this, we don't have to talk to each other for 3 more months to the next meeting.
Kids, come on, let's get out of here.
I'm supposed to have more lines. I'm the professional. Hey, it's Sully.
And I'm Nico.
And we opened the 21st Amendment 10 years ago at 563 2nd Street in San Francisco, just 2 blocks from Giants Park, to make great beer and have a great time doing it.
That's right, because to us, the 21st Amendment is more than just the right to make beer. It's the right to experiment, to be innovative, and just do things differently. And so now, we're putting our craft beer in cans.
That's right, cans. You can find our world-famous Hell or High Watermelon Wheat Beer at Brew for Your Die IPA in the Northeast, Northwest, parts of the Midwest, and Alaska, in cans and on draft. So next time you're at your local neighborhood pub or good beer store, be sure to ask for 21st Amendment in cans.
Because everyone likes it in a can.
Tasty crack cans.
Tasty crack can.
When Michael Fairbrother started moonlighting, he had no idea how quickly his dream was going to grow. Having homebrewed for 15 years, Michael decided to go pro. but not with beer. While attending his homebrew club meetings, he saw ladies knocking their men out of the way to try his mead. Moonlight Meadery is now 2 years old and can produce 200,000 bottles a year. It's the first New Hampshire winery to ever distribute to California and Australia. In fact, you can find Moonlight Meadery meads in Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maine, Rhode Island, Vermont, and New Hampshire, and they ship direct to 17 states. They produce 56 different varieties of mead and are unlike anything you've ever seen on the market. Michael Fairbrother at Moonlight Meadery is a real success story that can make the BN Army proud. Visit Moonlight Meadery in Londonderry, New Hampshire, or online at moonlightmeadery.com.
Like the Lance Armstrong of the beer world. Except for that nut thing. This is Brew Strong.
All right, we're back. We're having a bunch of great beer down at the wonderful White Lamb studio.
In tasting room.
Yeah.
Having my how many years have we been doing
having
this?
a nervous breakdown.
I still haven't figured out how to do this.
Did you spill beer into the controls, or
no? I don't know.
That's usually what happens.
What happened? There's always ghosts in the machines, is what happens, Yuseff.
That's a nice fade.
It's like that was perfect, right?
It's wholesome.
It was my techno fade. I'm trying to modernize all of our programs, so that was our techno fade. We're here at the White Labs new facility down in San Diego, California, during the Craft Brewers Conference. We got Yuseff Cherney from Ballast Point joining us today. Chris White's here with us, although he's out, I think, getting us some more beer. And this is a live Brew Strong, which we like to do from time to time. Usually we do them from the Homebrewers Conference, so it's nice to be able to come down to the Pro Conference and do it, especially now that not only is Jamil a pro brewer, but Palmer's like moving into the pro consulting world.
I'm trying to, anyway, yeah.
Which is fantastic. I see you've got a new shirt on here, Palmer Brewing Solutions.
He's got the shirt. It's official.
Yeah, that's and cards and the whole. I'm gonna get a truck sticker too.
You are. That's perfect. I see that it's got a self-portrait of you, a very strong man looking off into the distance. That's your logo.
Well, that was Push's idea.
It really looks like Yuseff, actually.
It does actually. It looks entirely like Yuseff. Right. I like that Yuseff, when he's not brewing, he's modeling, and for T-shirts.
Those arms look about right.
Yeah.
That's good, right?
Yeah, you got what, like 22s?
I had to use Photoshop, but yeah, you don't have to. Yeah.
There's no camera feed on this, right?
No, you can't see anything.
I was told I have the perfect face for radio.
Right. Actually, you can go to justin.tv/Brewing Network and watch this. Even the archive of the video will be up there for a short period of time, so if you miss it, you can check it out. Of course, the podcast will be in the Brew Strong. So, Whitey, why don't you tell us what we have in front of us in terms of of all these beers and the experiment that you've laid out?
Okay, so right now we have 29 beers on tap in the tasting room. We have a total of 32 taps plus 3 beer engines that are not. The beer engines aren't going just yet.
Wait, who's doing all this brewing?
Yeah, we didn't hire anybody else to do the brewing.
Okay,
that's the first part.
Okay,
so we hired John Oliphant, who goes by Johnny O. We hired him about a year ago, a little over a year ago, and he spent about 20 years with Rock Bottom. And we hired him not to be a brewer, but to first work at the lab in Davis, and then he came here and was our general manager when we opened up in June. Okay. So he's been our general manager, doing a lot of the day-to-day things that you need to do to run this facility. And when the brewery opened, I asked for volunteers, and Johnny O volunteered to brew the beer.
Nice.
Well, and so one of the things I wanted to jump in and say is that when you say who's doing all this brewing, one of the things that people should realize is when you split your wort and do multiple yeasts, you actually end up with multiple beers for producing one wort. Right. So it's really not a lot of extra brewing. So if somebody has the capability of producing like 20 gallons of beer and they're like, I don't want to drink 20 gallons of the same thing.
Sure.
You can pitch a Cal Ale yeast, you can pitch a Trappist yeast, and you end up with an American ale, and you end up with a Belgian ale.
Right.
You actually end up with, and the amount of work is no more than brewing a single beer. So doing different yeasts, it's really a great way to get more beer out of your brewing effort.
Actually, and Johnny O actually had to learn a little bit about the small scale brewing because he's been, like I said, commercial brewing in 15 and 20 barrel batches for 20 years, and so a lot of little things with the more beer system and stuff like that he had to kind of figure out. But obviously that went really quick. And then Neva Parker has brewed some beers. We don't have any of hers on yet. Trolls Prawl has brewed some beers. I'm going to brew some beers. We hope to do some more collaborations and maybe some clubs and things. So we hope to have a variety of people brewing beer.
Okay. Well, and then, of course, the other part, worth noting that you said before the break is that, Ballast Point can make the wort for you, and then you make the beer out of the wort, which I think is just interesting to note quickly. With certain brewery licenses, you can't have other professional breweries' beer on tap here that's produced somewhere else.
Correct. Every state's different. Every even county can be different in different states. But for most of California, the way it works here is a brewery can have a tasting room and can serve their beers in their tasting room for free or for a charge. In some states, you can't charge for tasters like that because they don't want the tasting rooms to become normal bars.
Right.
They're not 21 and over, things like that. You still have to only serve to 21 and over. So we can sell beer in our tasting room because of the brewing license. But we have to serve what we make here. So when you turn wort into alcohol, it's technically when it's being made, because otherwise it's sugar.
Otherwise, you're just buying essentially a food product from Ballast Point.
Right.
Okay.
Just like you buy an extract, or you can buy malt in different forms.
Yeah. Okay.
And there are some breweries doing this. There's a restaurant group in the Midwest that brews the wort and sends the wort to its different locations, and then it fills fermenters. And there's breweries doing a variety of things like this. But we want to brew most of it here because we want to do the small-scale batches. But I think doing a few things like that will be fun. And when we were brewing, it was also a nice help that Ballast did this with us because it was going to take us a while before we accumulated enough beer to put on tap. And so by doing 8 barrels all at once, we had a lot. You can see half of our tap list right now are made up of these Ballast Point collaboration beers.
Okay. So, again, this is all the same wort, just with different yeast. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So
and there's 8 beers in front of us.
It's a pale ale recipe, and Yuseff can say the yeast strain, if he wants to, what they use normally on it.
The German Kolsch strain.
Okay. I know he's open with it, because I know him well. So some brewers, they don't. Yes, you have different people on your show. Some brewers don't like to disclose what they use.
So some won't. Some don't even like to say which yeast company.
Yeah. We try to keep just a strict confidentiality with breweries we're working with. So we usually don't even say the name either. If somebody asks us, "Oh, do you work with this brewery?" Well, if I know them and I know that's okay to say yes or no, I do that. But usually we can't even really acknowledge that. Because they also do a lot of sample analysis. So say a brewery sends us a sample and it's contaminated and they want to see what's in it. They want to know with strict confidence that we're not going to tell somebody else, hey, that beer had some lacto in it.
Right.
So it even goes beyond yeast strain.
Okay.
So we've Belgianized some of this pale ale by using Belgian strains. We've used different ale strains. On the samples we're going to taste, we use WLP 36, Dusseldorf Alt Yeast, 41, Pacific Ale Yeast, 51, California Ale Yeast, California 5. I see they don't put 5 on our tap list. Good thing, we're checking things here. I know that's California 5, but that just says California Ale Yeast on the list. All right. Now, and then the next one is WLP 080 Cream Ale Yeast. Then we have Hefeweizen Yeast, 300. We have 380, the Hefeweizen 4. We have 400, the Belgian Wit Yeast. And we have 500, the Trappist Ale Yeast. So quite a few different yeast strains. None of these are the German Ale Kolsch strain. We did one with German Ale Kolsch. That was on tap and already ran out.
Okay.
Because it tasted like a Ballast Point Pale Ale?
Right. It tasted really like it was. It tasted like Ballast Point Pale Ale fermented a little bit warmer. Because the way we're fermenting these are a bit warmer, not as well temperature controlled as their great, big fermenters with awesome glycol.
What's a bit warmer?
Well, we have the room set at 66, so individual tanks can be varying. And what we're going to do is we're going to get it down to the individual tank, so we can control each tank when it's fermenting. So what do they, it could get, they do a pretty good job because it's also got fans in those rooms. So that circulates the air pretty good. So they're going to stick close to 66, but they could come to 70. They could come to 72. Some fermentations might really go strong and get up to 75.
Okay.
Well, and also, one of the things that people need to keep in mind when they're trying to, one of the things that we've learned from the Can You Brew It show is, when the size of the fermenters that the brewery is using, that plays a big role in the character of the beer when it ferments. So, they'll ferment something a lot hotter than you would as a home brewer because there's a lot of hydrostatic pressure on the yeast, and it actually, the CO2 levels are higher, and it really suppresses the, ester activity of the yeast, and you end up with a somewhat cleaner beer, even at, whatever temperature. And so that's why I don't really go by the temperatures that,
you also get a
breweries do.
Convection in the cylindrical conical that you probably
don't get in the fermenter.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
A lot of different things that affect fermentation, and so you could use the same yeast but not make the same beer.
And we want to get it down to individual fermenter because we want to do some lagers, of course. We want to do some Belgian beers at higher fermentation temperatures. We want to do same yeast strains at different fermentation temperatures, and if you can control precise it, I think that information is going to be interesting. Hefeweizen in yeast, the difference between 65 and 68. Is there a difference in banana? Is there a difference in some of the other flavors? You're going to see what we can dial in.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Fermentation temperature is huge.
And then aeration is another control brewers have, right? Temperature, aeration, and pitching rate. And aeration is something, it took us a few batches to optimize. When we took this Ballast Point Pale Ale over here, we aerated it because it wasn't aerated then, and so we aerated it, and we hadn't perfected that yet either. And I can see the difference in the beers as we've been going, and we've been nailing the aeration down to getting 10 ppm. They're resulting in better fermentations.
It's really interesting seeing a yeast company kind of go backwards or flip it around and become a brewer. I mean, I think you had to think that way in the beginning, but with this new facility and the new things you're doing, you're going through the same trials and errors that any brewer with a new system has to go through.
And I think it's going to just make us better because these are the things we tell brewers to do all the time, and we need to try these things and see how difficult they are, and optimize them. So it's a great experience for us, and it's a great R&D tool too. When we try new yeast strains, we can rapidly get these tests going, and I can already notice that in the few weeks since we've opened this tasting room, I'm tasting beers a little bit differently because now I've been focusing on trying all these different beers from a really detailed sensory perspective. Now I'm doing that at home, which I haven't done in a couple of years, really.
Okay.
Focus on that sensory aspect.
Yeah.
When you're looking at these beers, just gone through, I've tried them several times, but I would probably swear that there was different brewing water used.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Between the alt beer strain and I think it's one of the California strains, there's just a sharpness there that I would totally put on water. And it's just the yeast. I mean,
even color-wise, there's a vast difference in color, and people will tell me, they go, "Oh no, it's the color's different." Okay, no, the color's the same. It just depends on essentially how much yeast is left over, or what color's been removed by the yeast. It'll have an impact as well. So everything about beer is impacted by the yeast. Now, Yuseff, you use actually quite a few strains at Ballast Point. How did you come to get into? In a lot of breweries won't because it's challenging. There's a lot of challenges to it.
Yeah, the most unusual thing that I find in the brewing industry and especially California is Sierra Nevada came out with this incredible workhorse of a brew strain, and it caught on and it just swept the state, and when we were starting off, Jack really went out of his way to say, hey, you know what, let's make something with another strain so we're not just kind of fitting in with every other beer, because it does create a signature flavor profile. And so he got with Chris, and Chris was brewing with me at home, and we kind of set out to get a strain that Jack really loved, and it turned out to be an English ale strain that we ended up starting with. Super flocculent, and it left almost like a Madeira-like quality in the finished product, which really complemented the amber ale that we were putting it in. It does have a little bit of drawback that it tends to oxidize quickly, so the beer definitely has a different taste after several weeks, than it does fresh out of the tanks. After brewing with that strain, we realized, hey, we really need to make different beers with different strains, because that's going to lend to when we're making 40, 50 beers throughout the year, there isn't going to be this homogenous taste throughout all of them. And the thing I noticed, growing up here in San Diego with, we've got tons of breweries here, and I've traveled up and down the coast, had a lot of beers, there was this signature yeast taste, It's very hard to manage different strains. When one yeast is done, if you don't get it back into the tank fermenting again, you're making Chris White another apartment building, down in San Diego. So,
right.
So it's in our best interest to keep the different strains going. And how do most brewers do that? They use one strain, and they never have a problem with that. But we're using a German ale, Kolsch strain. We do use a little bit of the California ale yeast. We use our proprietary English ale yeast. We use a wit beer strain. We use a couple different lager strains. And when you see, at our new tasting bar, we've got 20 beers on tap. They are totally different. Every one of them. And some of the breweries, I must say, I would challenge people to put a blindfold on and taste, their 8 or 10 different varieties and really nail down which each one is. I mean, they might have different hop profiles, but other than that, they're maybe missing that other dimensionality that you can pick up from the yeast.
Yeah, yeast is such an important part of beer flavor.
And we're actually taking that also into the spirits and using the yeast that we use in our Calico and our Big Eye into our whiskey, because we are brewers, and we're translating that same philosophy into distilling, which, speaking of fermentation temperature, distillers don't give a crap about how hot their fermentation goes. And as brewers, we all know, hey, when you're fermenting hot, you're stressing the yeast out. You're putting off all these esters and higher alcohols and just all sorts of bad stuff. That's going to just be concentrated in the distilling process.
Right.
So by doing lower temperature fermentations in the distillery, using an ale yeast that creates certain flavors, we're out to make a better product, and that's what's going to separate out craft distilling, just like craft beer did.
So do the distillers generally just use one distiller's yeast?
Most commonly, the most famous quote I ever heard from a really big name,
Fleischmann's, Red Star.
Basically, yeah, and Chris can talk on that. But I was at a conference and I heard from a distiller who's very well respected. When I asked him, what he thinks about different yeast, he said, "Yeast is yeast and West is West. It doesn't matter." And at that point, if you told that to a brewer, they would instantly discredit you.
Right.
And
because they're just trying to make alcohol, and then they're dealing with all those higher alcohols and all those flavors later on by, discarding different parts and by aging it or what?
Well, it's similar to the wine guys. A lot of wine people think that the esters don't matter because in the aging process they'll go away. And I don't know. As a brewer, I'm just it's a hard one for me to agree with.
I think the same thing could actually happen in brewing, but it hasn't yet. This idea that people, I think what's happened in a lot of distilling and winemaking, because you'll run into that a lot, what Yuseff just said, yeast doesn't matter. They say that in winemaking and distilling. And yes, yeast has less of an overall contribution in those products because there's all these other flavors and there's different things happening like distillation. But there are differences. And people start to say there's no differences because what happens is people just start using one yeast strain.
Everybody starts using the same thing.
This can happen in the brewing industry. All of the current brewers, 80% of the current brewers, just start using one yeast strain, dry, liquid, whatever. But they just start using one yeast strain. And the next generation of brewers comes on, and they just start using that one yeast strain. Then another generation of brewers come on, they're using that one yeast strain. So somebody 3 generations later is going to ask a brewer, hey, isn't yeast important? And they say, no, we just had this stuff in, and it makes our beer.
It's a means to an end.
Yeah, they've lost that. And some people have lost that. A good majority of winemakers and distillers, where they used to use different yeast strains. If you go through the bourbon distilleries in Kentucky, they all have yeast tubs and yeast growing areas, they call where they're making different yeast strains and they're making different whiskeys and then they're blending together. And they used to do that. They used to do that in Scotland for Scotch. They'd add 10% of the yeast they would add would be brewer's yeast. Then they'd use some distiller's yeast. And they really felt that brewer's yeast added some full flavor to their whiskey. And there was a lot of ale yeast in Britain in Scotland and stuff at the time.
But then they wanted to use yeasts that would attenuate even further, get a more alcohol for the amount of
which a lot of distiller strains are better at.
Right.
So we work now with about half the bourbon distilleries in Kentucky, and we bank yeast for them and we supply yeast for them. And the other half have used basically simple, commercially available dried distiller strains. So there's a camp that believes in yeast and variety of yeast, and there's a camp that doesn't. And Four Roses is a good example of a distillery in Kentucky that makes bourbon, and they use 5 different yeast strains, and they ferment these 5 strains, they distill them, and then they age them, and then they blend. Their different packages are made up of this, and Yuseff's had a couple chances to try different yeast strains in these different distillates, and they're different.
And
I think that particular distillery is actually gaining a lot of respect now for its whiskey, for its bourbons and other whiskeys, because they're just a bit different, maybe a bit more interesting. They've got floral, fruity yeast. They've got non-floral. They've got phenolic yeast. They've got combinations, and then they blend those whiskeys together. So some of those materials are taken over in the distillate.
And as a large-scale brewer, if you came to White Labs and said, "Hey, I want to really see what these yeasts are doing," they might have a total different intention than a craft brewer. They might come in and go, "Hey, you know what? Number 15 got an extra, 5% attenuation, and the IBU contribution was a little bit higher. It didn't, absorb any." So over the course of the year,
money on IBU.
Over the course of the year, that's alpha acid units we're not spending for it, and the attenuation we can lower the grain bill, and all of a sudden they've made a $500,000 on over the course of the year. So, there's also even big scale implications of why you would do what you're doing here, other than just flavor.
Sure. Let's take a quick break, and what I'd like to do for the folks at home, because we've got these beers in front of us, and we're sampling them, but I want to maybe pick a couple of the strains that are in front of us and talk about the differences in the wort, so that folks can learn about a couple of the White Labs strains that we've used here. I would be particularly interested in the Dusseldorf strain that you said is in one of them, because I'm a fan of alt beers in general, and so I just knowing about characteristics of some of the White Labs yeast, I think would be good for us. Yeah. Do you want to do Adam and Eve before we go to break?
Sure. Yeah.
Nah, you know it by now. It's coupon code Jamil, right?
No. We'll do it later. I'll get my drink on. You embarrass me in front of Yuseff. I'm talking Adam and Eve. And,
you can talk dildos in front of Yuseff. He doesn't care.
Let's just go to break. We'll be back after this.
7 short minutes off California State Route 101. There lies a secret oasis for all craft beer lovers.
It's Relax, Grillin' and Chillin', bro!
Relax, Grillin' and Chillin' in Hollister, California is a craft beer lover's dream come true.
Not like a creepy JP dream. Like a normal craft beer lover's dream.
30 taps pouring your favorite craft beer. Visit Relax, Grillin' and Chillin' on Facebook to see the most up-to-date beers and what's on the grill.
And let us grill so you can chill.
Angus burgers, filet mignon and ribeye steaks, dogs and sandwiches, and more. Great food, great beer in a place where you can kick back and relax. Tuesdays are brewery nights. Come in to celebrate, and you're not limited to enjoying your favorite brew at the restaurant. Relax, Grillin' and Chillin' has beer to go. Relax, Grillin' and Chillin'. Let them grill so you can chill.
And now, Northern Brewer presents What If Homebrewers Ruled the World?
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll follow me, I will lead you into the gallery area. Now, the first piece up for sale today is a Jamil Zainasheff original, a bottle of 1997 vintage Evil Twin.
Oh, I see.
A bidding for this one-of-a-kind piece will start at £7,000. And if you'll continue to follow me, ladies and gentlemen, I can show you a rather abstract piece from Bay Area brewer Justin Crossley. It's a German Doppelbock entitled Justin's Giant Bock. The brewer's notes here indicate that this beer had excellent mouthfeel.
Next crazy dream? Or is it? With Northern Brewer, a thirsty nation can craft its own ale and lager for the greater good of mankind. Northern Brewer, the home of $7.99 Brew Saver shipping, superior customer service, and the finest selection of home brewing goods for the future.
That's it. I've had it. I am never putting hops in my beer again.
What? Why?
It's just too ridiculous. Insane prices, stupid contracts, high shipping costs, crappy selection.
Dude, you need Nico Brew.
Nico Brew will rock your f***ing face right the f*** off your f***ing skull. $5 shipping to all 50 states, plus fantastic international rates get you low prices on Nico Brew's great selection of hops and more. Whether you're a home brewer, a pro brewer, or a homebrew shop owner, Nico Brew can get you the hops you need in increments big and small, single orders, spot buys, or full contracts. And there's only one place to join the uber special secret elite bare bones club where you'll get the best deals anywhere.
Holy f***ing shit.
NicoBrew.com. NIKOBREW. Nico Brew, your bare bones buddy in the brewing business. When I order a beer, I want my server to know more about it than I do. I want someone who enjoys good beer and loves helping others enjoy it too. I want someone who knows how to pour a perfect pint for every beer style. I want a Cicerone.
The Cicerone Certification Program is creating the type of people who help you enjoy great beer. Home brewers and craft beer lovers know beer is more flavorful and complex than ever, and it takes some serious knowledge to store and serve beer right. Cicerones know beer. There are 3 levels in the Cicerone program: Certified Beer Server, Certified Cicerone, and Master Cicerone. Cicerones are truly the sommeliers of beer. The best beer locations have a Certified Cicerone on staff. Relaxed and unpretentious. Cicerones are tested on storing and serving beer, beer styles, flavor and tasting, the brewing process and ingredients, and pairing food with beer. Learn more about your next beer guide at cicerone.org. Certified Cicerone, because it takes top talent to present a perfect pint.
By popular vote from the Northwest Brewing News, HopTech has been voted the best homebrew shop in Northern California. Serving homebrewers for nearly 30 years in Dublin, California, HopTech carries more than 40 different kinds of hops and more than 60 different grains. Malt extract, spices and sugars, hop oils and extracts. Open every day except Wednesday, or shop online anytime at hoptech.com or call 1-800-DRY-HOPS, 1-800-379-4677. With in-store classes almost every Saturday, huge selection, and a dedicated commitment to their customers, HopTech is one of the longest-running and passionate homebrew stores, period. And now, by popular vote, the best homebrew shop in Northern California. And don't forget their 15% military discount. HopTech. Visit today at hoptech.com.
Back to the 2 guys that know how to turn beer into beer. This is Brew Strong.
All right, we're back. We're at the lovely new facilities at White Labs in San Diego.
What street?
Candida.
Candida.
Nice. Own it. Here at the Candida Monologues.
The Candida Monologues today.
Yeah, you need to come out with a new strain. I'm not going to say what, but you get my drift.
Well, there are some strains you could use in winemaking. Candida strains you could use in winemaking.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Are those like Lambrusco or...
No.
Oh.
No.
As I display my awesome wine knowledge.
No. There's different ones. Yeah. There's different ones.
All right, we're short on time because we've got a whole other show to do here today. But I did want to talk about these beers in front of us. And one thing that Yuseff mentioned, kind of at the beginning of the last segment, was that 2 of these beers he thought actually had different brewing water. There was such a difference that he had pinpointed that it would be brewing water. But knowing, of course, that it's the same wort that he made, it's really yeast driven. So which 2 yeast strains are we talking about when you said that, Yuseff?
That was the alt strain and then the California 5. So the California 5 being almost minerally, kind of sharper tasting, and the alt strain having that smoother, German style alt flavor. It's really crazy that almost has that soft.
It really does. That pale ale tastes like an alt beer.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that when I go to Germany and try the beers there, one of my favorite things about them is the soft aspect of them. They just have this gentle softness about them instead of that crisp, biting.
Well, it's got to be a pH thing. It's got to be an acid thing. It's got to be reduction in IBUs. It's got to be certain alcohols that are produced. It's got to be what else, Chris? What else? Would
Well,
be
I think
in there
Yuseff really found something spectacular, because I think that if you went to a German alt brewer and you asked him, "Is this softness because of the yeast?" he'd think you were crazy.
Yeah, they go on about decoction or people. It just drives me nuts. People talk about all these brewing processes, and then they don't realize that so much flavor is controlled by the yeast. The process. Yeast and fermentation is the first thing you need to look at.
We were looking at one of the Saison beers earlier, you and I, and talking about how one of them just screamed candy sugar to you. I mean, they were just a rich sweetness that you could smell in the nose.
Yeah, it was the 500. Wasn't it? Or no, it was which one? It was the as we bring everything to a stop.
Golden Ale.
It was the Golden Ale. It was the 570.
570.
The 570 had this huge candy, like hard candy kind of character to it. I mean, it just jumped out at you. And I've heard people will tell me, "Oh no, you can smell the Belgian candy sugar in the beer. It's all because you used candy sugar instead of table sugar. You can't use table sugar. You got to use the candy sugar, and that's the difference." And it's like, no, it's a yeast-derived thing, and that's where it comes from. Is that kind of character? It seems like hard candy was added to it,
right? But it's
amazing.
But being able to taste it side by side with same wort, and a different yeast strain made it readily apparent.
Yeah, right. Those Saison beers we don't have in front of us right now, but those have been the most popular sets of beers. We've gone through maybe 4 or 5 Saison brews so far, and that's one thing people are really interested in tasting different yeast strains. And it's another R&D perspective here too, because in that Saison set we have WLP 585 Belgian Saison 3, which is not even available yet, but it's going to be our platinum release in July, August. So people could come in here now and try what Belgian Ale 3 is.
What's coming
Saison
out?
Ale 3 is going to taste like.
You get a little advanced sneak peek there.
Sneak peek.
Something's going to be a platinum strain, and so you're going to charge like 10 times as much. Right?
Oh yeah.
Is that one in this batch?
Never done that.
Would you say 003 Saison? Is that in this batch of beers?
WLP 585 Belgian Saison 3 ale yeast, and that is tap number 10 in the tasting bar.
In the tasting bar,
you can taste after.
Okay.
So, do you have the IBU reports
yes.
on this?
So, all of the beers we have in front of us, I have the data for. So we have the IPA series, the Ballast Point Collaboration series, and so here's the IBU data.
So what's the IBU difference between the California 5 and the alt?
So you can see the alt is down at 21.7, and the other one at 26. So there's a immediate thing. I wanted to check on 22 here. 29. I really noticed that the Belgian was dramatically more bitter, and it's baffling to see that I was right. It's almost 8 IBUs difference there. So that's kind of going to contribute to the softness that you're going to perceive, and why that alt strain might be doing that. So
how are other things like attenuation?
And that's interesting, because some of the small batches we made here, you wonder too if the IBU difference can be also helped because of such a small batch and the runoff time difference. But these Ballast Point beers came off of a 50-barrel brew house.
Wort,
so that's well homogenized wort.
And the California is attenuated a little bit more, just a bit, not incredibly dramatic here. Final gravity 1014 and a 1013, 4.6 versus 4.8 alcohol content. So the bitterness units are probably the most distinct there. The pH is almost identical.
Well, it's got to be other compounds like acetaldehyde, or even perhaps
phenol,
diacetyl, or phenols, or there shouldn't be any phenols in either one of those, but other compounds and other esters and alcohols and things like that. That the type that's produces a different, flavor and sharpness versus, even if the amounts are the same, just the character is completely different.
I think that's
a big part of it.
This is stuff that's just going to keep, the level of knowledge that's going to come out of this kind of experiment is going to be enormous over time. Stuff that we didn't even, think about as much anymore. There's so many different things to think about in brewing that this is just adding to it. Number 15 in front of me, White, you had said that this was done with a Hefeweizen yeast. Do I have that right?
Yes, a Hefeweizen yeast. So a nice example of taking a pale ale recipe, no wheat malt in it, I don't think.
There's a little wheat.
Oh, a little wheat.
Just a little bit,
here.
Though. Yeah. And what it does to it.
Yeah, it's still pretty clean at this fermentation temperature, but there's that clove and phenol character. And if, traveling around, I get to go to some other breweries in different places. Even here, we did, in this room yesterday, we did a class for 40 people that are here for the CBC. We did a yeast essentials class. And in those 40 people, we had 9 people from Mexico alone.
Wow.
So they all talked of a kind of beer revolution happening in Mexico. They were from Guadalajara, Mexico City, Tijuana, Mexicali. Yep. And that's exciting to see, and they have a little bit harder time getting raw ingredients. They all talked about the challenges of getting malt and hops, and yeast is another challenge. And sometimes I go to those areas where they only have maybe one type of yeast, whether it's dry or something else, but usually dry, and they'll have a Hefeweizen like this on the menu, but not able to use a true Hefeweizen yeast.
You can't do a border run and bring some yeast back?
Right. Fortunately, we're at a good location, yeah. So the breweries in Mexicali and Tijuana, along the border here in Baja California, if you go into Homebrew Mart, there's a good chance you're going to see one of those guys in there buying a pile of yeast.
Yeah. I see, yeah.
They have access to ingredients because they have Homebrew Mart here in San Diego, and that's where a lot of the small breweries in northern Mexico are getting their ingredients.
Yeah.
That's great.
I was just down there in Ensenada last month for their beer fest and talked to a lot of the area brewers, and they do come up here and buy ingredients. And honestly, one of the best German Hefeweizens or Crystalweizen was at the Bossinger's brewery in Tijuana. He had a really nice beer that they were going. All the beers in Mexico are improving dramatically, I think.
Yeah, they are. They are, and we've been sending more yeast to Mexico City and other places in the last year, a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So with this, I think one way to talk about sometimes a good way to talk about a flavor profile is to talk about what's missing that we might expect. So I've never had a beer that's a pale ale brewed with a Hefeweizen yeast. So what makes this not a Hefeweizen? What's missing from it that the yeast might otherwise use, or the malt being wheat? That's not here, because I think sometimes you can learn about what something does by knowing what it's not doing.
That's a good question.
Well, like ferulic acid from more wheat malt or ferulic acid rest.
Right.
Is said to increase the amount of clove and things like that.
I see.
I actually thought that the alt initially when I first smelled it actually had more banana than the Hefeweizen yeast. Kind of got a banana charge out of it, and it's kind of gone now. But I thought that was an interesting comparison.
I tasted that too. I smelled that.
And, and then there's probably some other malts in here that are adding to some flavors that you wouldn't taste in a wheat beer. Some specialty malts.
Yeah, we've got some Munich in there that you probably would never have in a Weizen beer. So yeah, and we're doing just a straight infusion, single temperature infusion mash. So I've talked to German brewers who swear up and down that you need to do decoctions to get the certain compounds to produce ultimately that signature flavor of the German wheat beer. So
right.
I remember one of the first times I brewed a wheat beer was with Chris, and I had the temperature down at the 128 or whatever it was to start, and he looked at me and said, "Hey, have you ever done a wheat beer just at a single temp infusion?" And I don't, no, but all the books say you should do it this way. He goes, "Well, have you ever done it the other way?" I'm like, screw it, and I turned the heat back on and did an infusion, and it actually came out really nice.
Oh, it did.
But there are points to argue that maybe it could have been a little bit better. It depends on the banana versus the clove aspect of the some people really like that banana milkshakey kind of Weizenbier, and other people like that more traditional German clove kind of quality. So
the thing is that even with some of the differences, and maybe that it's a little more mellow than say a traditional German Hef or something, if you put it in front of me blind and said and asked me what kind of beer that is, I'd say it's a Weissbier of some kind. You clearly it's still yeast driven enough that I would never say, well, that's a pale ale with something wrong with it. I would say that's a Weissbier,
especially if you had a little bit more turbidity to it.
Right.
And if it was served in a Weissbier glass.
And put it in a Weiss with a big head on it, and I go, oh, it's a German beer. It's a Weissbier.
I mean, if you compare, the 300 and the 380.
It is more turbid, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's plenty.
And does the color here on these charts, Chris, do they reflect turbidity, or is it...
It doesn't, but sometimes the numbers look funny because turbidity wasn't taken out. But usually, you remove the turbidity and then you do the color, but it doesn't always come out nicely. So,
because if you look at the numbers, it is noticeably darker than the alt beer, but it could be just the...
you can't get rid of all of it. So, like with the new numbers we just had for Saison, all of those are cloudy in that series, and there's some strange numbers, and so we'll probably have to go back and repeat those color numbers because some of the cloudy beers are difficult to get a good color.
One thing that really stood out to me out of the set was the cream ale yeast. Now, cream ale, a lot of times, it could be lager done. This is a cream ale blend that White Labs does, and one of the things about cream ale is kind of, it's fairly clean, but you could also have, a bit of a corn-like, or a DMS character in there. And I swear, it just stood out to me like that. Initially, it's not there as much now that it's been sitting for a while, but...
Is that 14?
Initially, 14. I kind of got like this little bit of a corn character to it.
I could have sworn somebody slipped in a Little Kings on me.
And I was just like, well, wait a minute. I never thought that you got that from the yeast at all.
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird that
that's
in there. I'm wondering if I imagined it or... I mean, do you get that from that yeast?
Yeah. Does that one, did 14 attenuate more than, say, 11, for example, the
I've
Düsseldorf?
been telling people you use a lager yeast or use Cal Ale or whatever for your cream ale, but I would say go with the cream ale blend for your cream ale.
Now that you're tasting this.
Like,
that one dried out almost.
I was kind of surprised.
Out of
and it should. I mean, the cream ale should attenuate out. Should be quite dry. You get this little bit of a corn sweetness back.
Yep.
And
there it is.
I'm just amazed at that yeast blend. I don't know what you're doing in there, Chris. God knows what work going on in the lab, but
it's fun to see that things work out.
I'm kind of shocked. Really shocked because I've never recommended the cream ale blend. Never.
Huh. Really?
I've always gone with use a lager yeast or this or that. I don't know, so I didn't expect anything from it, but I'm just amazed.
Is the malt bill on a cream ale similar, malt and hops similar to a pale ale?
No, not really.
It's typically got
because this is another one to me that if you put it in front of me and told me it was a cream ale, I'd say you're damn right it is.
It's a little heavier, a little maltier. I think I think the Munich malt and whatever. There's a little too much malt character in there, but I'm just amazed at how well that yeast did for turning something else into the style that it would be.
Yeah,
I'm kind of shocked.
I think it's my favorite beer on the panel here. Actually, it's got a really nice flavor to it. Some of the other ones, and I think it's an interesting part of this experiment, do taste a little funky in the sense that it's not like a beer I've ever had. It would be hard for me to describe to somebody what kind of beer I'm tasting.
Right.
And I think that's in part due maybe that you're putting a yeast strain into a pale ale that wasn't really meant to make that beer. So, but this one with the cream ale, oh man, I just drink that. I just order another one off the tap. It tastes, it doesn't have any weird things going on for me. Whereas some of the others, like I said, they're just a little off style. I don't know how to describe what they are.
Belgian wit, you know.
Yeah.
Kind of strange.
But if you were to take any of these, I think you could take just about any of the non-souring. Even the souring would probably work out pretty great. But you could take any of the yeast that White Labs produces, ferment a beer with it, whatever wort with it. It's going to turn out to be a good beer if you ferment it properly, right?
Yeah.
And your sanitation's good and all that. It doesn't matter what the wort is. It's more about that fermentation process and starting with a good product to. You'll make beer. You could make good beer.
Right. Which, by the way, is the other interesting part about having Yuseff produce the wort and you do the fermentation. And I think it's a good way to see how important fermentation is.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I would like to go to what's this wort the base of in Ballast Point?
This is our pale ale.
It's your pale ale.
Yeah, which is kind of confusing to people sometimes when they're dealing with a brewery that's especially West Coast, San Diego, a pale ale that has 23 IBUs. What the hell is this thing?
It should be at least 70.
Yeah. It should be at least 70 and 10%, right? I was looking at the Symposium Ale, and in big letters it says San Diego Pale Ale, and you basically don't even see that it says double IPA, and I go 10% for well, I guess San Diego Pale Ale is 10%. It's just like what we make here. But it's a Kolsch beer. We started off with basically a German-style pale ale recipe. That's the reason we use the German-style yeast on there. It's a traditional Kolsch beer, grain bill with the Munich and the wheat, and then German hopping. So it doesn't fit the bill of a West Coast pale ale at all, and that's why it's so perfect for a base beer for doing trial fermentations, because it doesn't have that 108 IBUs and 10% alcohol.
Right.
It's down there, so it serves as a good blank slate for taking these different yeasts and kind of tweaking them out.
I would like to see you do, Chris, do some on worts that should get to plus 10%. Because so many people, they're like, well, what yeast will ferment over 10%?
Right.
Pretty much every single one of them.
Right. We should do some high gravity beers. I want to do some bigger beers, and for those kind of reasons, and also to highlight what yeast do differently in big beers.
Big beers, yeah.
Because some people say that you can't tell the difference if they're a bigger beer.
Oh, you can tell the difference. Oh, yeah.
You've had, Charlie Bamforth at Davis. You've had him on the show, right? Mm-hmm. We have a little lab there in Davis, and I talk at Davis sometimes, teach there, and he likes to say that different yeast in a big beer probably doesn't matter, but I think with a tasting room. Well, so he inspired me to do this tasting room too. All these little pieces made it happen because I want to have these on here and have you can decide for yourself. You can taste them and you will see a difference. I guarantee.
And I think the easiest way to prove this is make a big wort. Strong wort, and then you cut it with water and make different gravities of it, and then same yeast, different gravities, or different yeast, different gravities, and I think it's gonna make a difference.
With a larger brewery too, it's fairly easy to do because you can do first running beers. Mm-hmm. So when we want to do a small batch of a really strong beer, we'll take a little bit of first runnings and.
The thing that worries me about that though is those later runnings. Maybe you're getting more tannins or not. I don't really know. I think you do.
But if you're doing a series of say 10 fermentations and all you're really focusing on is what the yeast is going to do at the higher alcohol level. Right. Because it would be easy for Chris to come over when I'm doing a whiskey wash. It's 100% two-row malted barley, no specialty.
There you go. Right.
And I run off at about 10% or about a 1085 starting.
See, I got you set up. You just need to show up with your empty carboys.
The only problem is he'll actually have to come home and do some work and boil it and add some hops versus have it ready to go for him.
Yeah. He's got staff for that.
Yeah, he's got people.
I really like that we've turned Whitey back into a home brewer for this facility.
It's fun. And it's fun for the people here. You mentioned I've got people, behind this in this place we have about 50 people here making yeast every day, even when this class was going on. And they're walking by the tasting room now, a lot of just going, wow, this is fun. They get to see customers. They get to see real, they get to taste beers with the yeast in it. Because I travel around a lot, so do some other people, but most of the people here making yeast on an everyday basis, they don't travel, they don't get to go around and see different breweries and beer festivals and stuff. So it's been a lot of fun for them, and I think they're just to see this, but it's also going to make them better at making yeast, because they're going to see the results. So.
Well, and for that matter, they might, even if they're out drinking beer sometimes, they might not know that that's your yeast. That's the yeast that they made.
Right.
Especially with the confidentiality and things, that you have.
Yeah.
They might have been making the yeast for a brewer for years and never even known it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So getting to taste more and more of it in here.
Yeah, it really depends where you are in the chain of production, if you ever know what brewery gets the beer.
I see.
If you're in some packaging, or of course you're going to see a lot of the brewery labels. If you're in the lab doing the QC on the individual brewery packages, you're going to see it. But if you're a few steps back in some of the production cycles, you won't see any brewery names going around, so you wouldn't know where the yeast is going.
Yeah. Well, that is cool to be able to let the rest of the employees actually taste a product that they're back there working on all the time. Well, before we run out of time, we do want to taste this last beer. Yuseff brought us a very unique beer, by the way he described it to me before the show. In fact, I said we can't taste it till the end because of it.
I tasted it last year.
Oh, you did?
And I am amazed at that you can taste everything that's in it.
All right, Yuseff?
Well, the kind of cool thing, your show caters to the home brewers, and this one is just the total, all of our beers are made by home brewers because that's how we all started. But this one's just kind of a home brewer's dream come true. He, a guy by the name of Alex Tweet, entered a homebrew contest that we were putting on with Holiday Wine Cellar up in Escondido. And he actually ended up winning the contest with a beer that was completely out of this world as far as what we could had ever tried before, and it's a beer that we call Indra Canindra, and that was the name given to it by Holiday Wine Cellar. And it is a foreign-style stout, but it's actually spiced with curry, kaffir lime, cumin, toasted coconut, and cayenne.
Wow.
And it's almost done like a tea that we put into the finished beer, and it's one of those ones where you try it and you're just like, I've never had this before. So when you do all these yeast samples and it doesn't quite work out for you, you can still take a bunch of spices and turn it into something else. And but this was totally Alex just came up with this recipe as a perfect pairing beer. You put this with some Thai food or something. It's just amazing. Actually, Colby, one of our specialty brewers, or the specialty brewer for Ballast Point, he says the perfect pairing for Indra Canindra is white rice because you don't really need anything else.
Right.
That's a pretty good summary of what this beer is all about. But yeah, he brewed this beer. It was incredible. We put it out in the bottle, and then we actually hired him as a brewer. So he's one of the production brewers for us now.
Oh, cool.
So it was kind of that, home brewer goes crazy, makes this incredible beer, and then
gets a job.
Working. Yeah.
When I see a list of ingredients like this, Peter Simons and I came down last year for the Homebrewers Conference, and we tasted this beer then. And when you see a list of ingredients like that, you go, well, first off, too many ingredients.
Yeah, you go,
it's going to be
shit.
muddy. It's it's if you were to send this into a competition, my advice to you as a home brewer is don't list all those ingredients. The judges will never taste them. They're going to mark you down for that ingredient not being in the beer. But you taste this, and you get every single one of those ingredients is there, and it's in a great balance. And
the funny thing
amazing.
was he actually put it in the wrong category, and I think it was Ryan, our distribution manager, that tasted it and said, the hell is this? And then he went back and looked at the entry, and he's like, oh, it was put in the wrong category, and he handed it to me, and I was like, what? What is going on here? And then we started breaking it down, and we did want something unusual to brew. We weren't looking for another pale ale, kind of thing.
You didn't get that.
Yeah, this is one of those ones. A lot of people will try it and be blown away and love it. Other people are just too shocked by it. We brought some over to Scotland and unleashed it at one of the Brewdog bars over there. And the people were, they're used to eating curry all the time.
Yeah.
And they're like, why hasn't somebody done this before? This
is like curry and a beer.
So it's a fun one. We're going to have this and the Sculpin on tap at the CBC Zoo event tonight. So if any the people that are attending that want to come by and give it a try.
You should.
So.
It's just the aroma, right? It did shock me right when I put my nose to the glass.
Right.
But right after I got over that, it just smelled like I want to go to lunch.
Yeah.
It smelled like exactly what I'd like to be eating for lunch. Right. It smells like food.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what it smelled like.
Finished too.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what it smelled like. Guys, gals, fellas.
Yeah.
You're looking to spice things up in the bedroom?
Oh, yeah.
You're looking at some adventurous new toy for your guy or your gal?
Ballast Point Interconnector.
Yeah.
Is this a Roger Davis ad?
It's sort of, except they actually pay.
Yeah, check out adamandeve.com. They've got a great array of wild and spicy things there for your friends and friends and lovers. If you buy one item, they give you 50% off that one item.
Yep.
And then they're going to throw in 3 free adult DVDs.
Right.
And it's not just like any adult DVDs, like the garbage pile they're going to throw 3 in.
No.
You actually get to pick from those DVDs.
Right.
Then a free extra gift. I tell you, Yuseff, it's so essential I can't mention it on the air.
Right.
Free extra gift. And free shipping.
All you have to do when you go to checkout, you enter
writing it down.
Chris White's writing it down. Coupon code.
The special coupon code is Jamil. Jamil.
So easy.
My name is a special code at adamandeve.com. So go check it out. Good sponsors. They've supported us for a long time, and they got a lot of great items, reasonable pricing. Again, you're going to get 50% off one item. You're going to get 3 free adult DVDs. You're going to get a free extra gift so sensual we can't mention it on the radio.
Yep.
And free shipping on the whole thing.
Right.
Just type in JAMIL at checkout.
Now, Yuseff.
Yeah.
You know how you know you've made it? It's not when you've won Small Brewery of the Year at the World Beer Cup. It's when your name is the coupon code at an adult website.
That's nice.
That's how you know you've made it.
I am something of a big thing around the adult website industry.
I don't think there's another measuring stick, so to speak, that could be used than to have your name as the coupon code.
There you go.
All right. So we are out of time. We do have another Brew Strong show coming up just after this, and we're going to be talking to Coronado Brewing Company. And the White Labs, is she the production manager? Why do I always screw up Neva's title?
She's head of laboratory operations, which means she's in charge of a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
She's in charge of the labs here in Davis or wherever else we put them. She's in charge of all of the yeast and other non-yeast things like nutrients and enzymes that we do. Overall in charge of all the production, even though people that work for her plan all the production, she supervises all that. So
there you go.
So Neva Parker is going to sit down with us, and she's also just a wonderful human being who's always helping homebrewers out and pro brewers out and the Brewing Network out, and so that's going to be fun. And we're going to be talking to Sean from Coronado. He's going to sit down with us too, and we're going to talk about learning to use yeast and how it can really change the way you brew things. And that's coming up just next, live here from White Labs. What'd you give us here, Yuseff, to say goodbye to?
This is the Devil's Share whiskey. This is not in for sale, and this is barrel strength. So we're at 120 proof right now. So when you take a sip, go easy. It's definitely not beer, but it was made with the same yeast that we use in our beer. So
okay,
that is really smooth.
Which yeast?
It's a proprietary English strain. And this is aged in brand new American oak like a bourbon.
Wow!
But it is a single malt, 100% malted barley whiskey, so not peated, but just like a brewer's malt. So
at that strength, like Palmer said, it's really smooth.
It is,
but it's still, but it's also hot as hell after. But it goes down really smooth. The heat just kind of comes up afterward with that 120 proof.
And most people aren't used to drinking 120 proof whiskey,
right?
So when you try it, it's definitely got the heat, but for that high of a proof, it's it's fairly smooth. And we're going to take this down to probably 95 proof when we go to bottle. So.
Wow!
So we're special here.
Your listeners can hear hear us swallowing this.
Yeah, it's all in the microphones too.
But the way you have to do it is different than beer because you can't just casually sip a 120 proof.
No, you have to breathe it in a little, and
the best way to go is actually not to inhale through your nose with your nose stuck in the glass. It's actually just to approach it with an open mouth and just kind of breathe through your mouth and nose at the same time. And if you swirl it, you're going to volatilize a bunch more vapor. So you don't really need to do that. You can just go right into it. But yeah, normally we'd hit it with some water to kind of tone it down a bit. It'll actually bring out a little bit more flavor even. But I just siphoned this out of a barrel. It's 3 years old. And you guys are some of the few that have actually tasted it. I've been guarding this kind of stuff with my life. We've about the only place we've had it out is to enter it into award shows. So
okay. Well, thanks for the treat. It's a really nice treat.
It's got amazing long oak in the finish. It's not overly oaky at all. Yeah, but late in the finish, you're still getting the barrel.
We're using full size barrels. It's the way the bourbon guys do. A lot of the small craft distilleries are rushing their barrels by putting them into small barrels. Yeah. And I think you get a tannic astringency with those small barrels. So I really prefer the large barrel.
Oh yeah, it's there, but it's delicate. It's got a long trailing.
Yeah, with that caramel wood sugar too. Yeah, it's
very nice.
Love it.
Awesome. Well, and another great show. Made even more special with all the Ballast Point beer and all the great sampling beers from Light Labs as well. I'm beside myself. Really thought that this was. I was looking forward to this, but I didn't realize how great this would be.
This was a great show.
Excellent show. And if you appreciate programming like this, if you'd like to see more of this, and you like the Brewing Network, go to the Brewing Network store. BrewingNetwork.com, thebrewingnetwork.com/store. You get some shirts, some hats, some glassware, lots of good stuff. And when you buy that stuff, it goes to the bottom line of the Brewing Network, and it actually helps pay for shows like this.
That's right.
Check out our great sponsors, Blickman Engineering, BlickmanEngineering.com, Blickman with 2 N's. They've been a long-time sponsor, and really, they're paying for the show, so you don't have to. So check them out as well.
And of course, White Labs, a long-time sponsor, and for hosting us. Chris, you're always a gracious host. I know you're proud of your new facility, and you should be. It's rad. It's such a cool place, man.
Well, thank you for doing the show here. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I wouldn't have wanted to miss it. And Palmer and Jamil, you guys. I'm glad you came to do some Brew Strong out of this, because I think it needed some Brew Strong, not some session. It needed some smart guys in here.
Quality programming, not that other fluff you do.
I agree with you 100%. Yeah. So good stuff, Whitey. Thank you. I'm looking forward to a good couple of days down here in San Diego with you and the crew.
Great.
All right, Yuseff, you're the man. Thanks, brother.
Thanks.
All right.
Come by the bar.
Brew Strong.
Brew Strong, everybody.